welcome to Mango Tango Music. I'm Abby, and today I'm joined with Susie, Jay, Izzy, and Mel. And today we have such an awesome groovy person. We have Madeleine O'Gorman, who is the label manager at Mushroom, more specifically Ivy League and Liberator Records. So Madeleine, if you just want to give us a bit of like a brief rundown about what you do in your role and what it's all about.
Of course. And firstly, thank you so much for having me, everyone. I think what you're doing is so good and really proactive and just really admirable at the moment. So anyway, to stay connected, I'm a big fan of. My role is I'm a label manager for two record labels that fall within the Mushroom Group banner. One of them is Ivy League Records. Ivy League is an Australian record label that's been around for, I think, about 23 years now. Is just a really incredible family unit with a very rich history and incredible directors and founders who are still really active to this day. And the other label I work for is Liberator Music, which was my first role in labels at Mushroom. Equally tight-knit family. But the difference between the two is Ivy League is an Australian label that signs Australian bands, whereas Liberator Music is it's our international label division of the Mushroom Group. So basically Liberator acts as a label for overseas artists who they basically need a label in Australia to help promote and release their music locally. And they need to find a home in Australia, with a label that is well connected and knows the industry here. So Liberator is definitely that. My role as label manager is, it's like so many roles in the music industry. There's so much to it, but I think in the simplest form is once a band or an artist has gone through the recording process and has worked with our A&R manager, this is on the Ivy League front, our A&R manager, Mariska Cornelius, who is incredible and so talented. Once they've gone through that process, once they've finished recording a single, an EP or an album, and the music's all packaged up, it's all ready to go, it's all ready to release, that's essentially when my job kicks in. So my job is to then, I guess, work out how we're going to release the music, how we're going to get it out to the world. It's timelining everything. It's working with so many incredible teams within the Mushroom Group as well. So there's a promo team, there's a sync team, there's a marketing team who are incredible. And there's also outsider contractors like designers. And so there's definitely, an army that happens or that exists in the background to then make sure the music goes out to the world. And essentially, my job is to kind of be the central contact for everyone during that process.
I'm just gonna pipe in. I'd love to know, I guess, what steps you took to, I guess, get into this position, what you did, what you studied, or interned prior.
I did so much volunteering. I wrote for Street Press magazine, Impress, it was called back in the day, and then did a bit of writing when it formed into the music. There was an incredible editor at the time called Bridget, and she was a really big mentor for me. I did a lot of writing for them. I did writing for Tone Deaf as well, sub-editing for Tone Deaf. I just anything I could get. I also did an internship at a booking agency as well. So I think probably all up, it was about a year and a half of volunteering. And I think it's a fine line between, you definitely don't want to get to the point where you're doing work for free for years. Like, you don't want to get to that point. But if you can strike that right balance initially between finding really meaningful volunteer work that has a value, and the value might be you can meet so many people through that gig and you can make lifelong connections and they become your mentors. I think at the time, that's definitely the value I got out of volunteering.
Looking from the outside in, looking into a record label from the outside, it can sometimes seem a little complicated and a little bit overwhelming. So
Yeah.
can you dive into how a record label works and maybe how they are changing as their roles are changing as the things, things evolve?
Yeah, that's a good question. So basically the primary role of a record label is to release music on behalf of the artist and to promote the music on behalf of the artist. So the value for the artist is by signing a record deal, they have access to a team of people that have been in the industry for a long time, that have some really great, meaningful contacts within the industry as well, and really good relationships in the industry. So, I think for every artist, they've got to find the right label for them. Because it's the relationship between artists and label is actually a lot more intimate than people think. Well, it might not be. I mean, in our case, it is, because we're really close with everyone, and we've got a really strong ethos behind signing artists that we really do connect to. It doesn't mean we have to have the same opinions, but as long as we respect each other's opinions, that's the most important thing, and respect each other. So I guess essentially the role of the record label, but the biggest role is the distribution of music. So getting it out to all the people that need it, whether that be streaming services like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, then also your physical retailers like JB Hi-Fi, Sanity, indie stores who are incredible. And in my opinion, are the total heartbeat of this industry as well. They're absolute champions for artists. So it's getting it to the right people, but then also promoting it. So just finding as many opportunities for the artists to get exposure. But yeah, and I think in our case at Mushroom, extremely lucky. We've got such a great, well-oiled machine, for lack of a better word. We've got specialists in each different field. So we've got a radio specialist, we've got streaming, we've got online, we've got print. There's so many different people that go out there on the artist's behalf and talk on their behalf. And, so there's a lot of, it goes both ways. As the artist has to trust, the label that they're signing up for, that they will be that person to do justice to their music. And that's something that at Ivy League and Liberator, and all Mushroom labels, we're really conscious of doing that and doing the artist justice, because at the end of the day, it's their baby.
Yeah. I've got a quick question. Sorry, I'm just going to butt in.
Go for it.
Like the day of a label manager, if you guys were, had an artist that was doing a release, what would that kind of look like?
Okay, it's a good question. I'm going to be very cliche and say no day is the same, but I think to get down to the crux of what I do, I actually do a lot of writing, believe it or not, which is great that my degree has come in handy. I do a lot of writing. I do, press releases. I'm constantly doing pitch points. There's different, different media and sync, and a lot of different platforms that want the information delivered to them in different ways. And it's basically dissecting everything that we do and just tailoring it to everyone and their needs. So there is a lot of that. There's a lot of writing different pitch points for streaming services, bios for media, bios for sync, radio, prefer things in one certain way as well. Online prefer things in a different way. And also just, not tailoring your pitch to different people, because it's all the same information, but just giving it to them in the way that it's the easiest, most accessible. So my job is basically to make everyone else's job easier and give them what they need to give us the best chance of getting results. So there's a lot of writing. There's a lot of paperwork too. There's a lot of paperwork setting up music to get it delivered to all streaming services. So I guess that side of things comes in. There's label copy, there's different briefs you need to provide different people. I work and talk with our A&R manager, Mariska, a lot for Ivy League. We probably talk on the day like twice. I have 2 meetings with the Liberator team every day. This is just COVID wise, just because we're not in the same space. So we catch up twice a day. And the reason for that is we'll catch up in the morning because overnight we've received all the emails from internationals. So you wake up and everything's come through from them overnight. So in the morning we do a debrief, and then at the end of the day we do another debrief before we fire stuff back usually. I talk to our artist managers a lot about so many different things. I talk to our promo team constantly as well, not just on a strategy level of when and why we do things, but also just logistic wise too. There's a lot of timings that we all work on together. So getting everyone across a time or getting everyone across a plan. As much as there are a lot of kind of, that sounds more administrative tasks, there's the other side is creative. So you always want to just keep your mind as alert as possible, because there's so many opportunities to be creative. Like, you know, whether it's like, for example, I have a manager call me the other day and he's like, I've got a really cool idea for TikTok. What do you think of this? You know, and you've got to always be like, yeah, okay. Or someone else called me and they're just like, we're thinking of doing a live, we're doing a performance and stream, but we want to record it and maybe release it one day. What do we think? Would the label be interested? So that's, you know, this just, yeah, sorry, it's such a waffly answer, but there's so many different, I guess, tentacles. But yeah, I guess it's a really nice combination between all the admin that needs to be done to get the music out and to make sure it's delivered properly, versus creative conversations.
On the note of overseas, since the music landscape is so different depending on the region and country, what would you say are some of the differences between national record labels and international labels?
That's a really good question. I think in my specific circumstance, for Ivy League, considering bands they're signed on Aussie soil, they're Aussie bands. We meet them, we go see the gigs. Ivy League is very much the home label, and that's a term that is pretty much given to any record label that, you know, in most cases that they're the ones that sign the act and have that initial relationship and strike that initial relationship. So Ivy League is the home label for those acts, which just means that we're way more in touch with the artist directly. We're talking to them a lot. We're basically creating campaigns from scratch with them and with their management teams on an Ivy League front, whereas the Liberator music front, the difference is Liberator isn't, in most cases, there are a couple of labels where they are, a couple of artists where they are, but in most cases, Liberator isn't the home label. Liberator is basically a label that the home label, whether they're based in the US or the UK or Europe or Southeast Asia, they have pretty much approached Liberator and said, we need some kind of representation in Australia and New Zealand for our artists. Can you be that person on the ground for us in your territory, because that's you're the expertise, you're the experts in your territory, but we're based elsewhere, so we need someone. So that's where Liberator isn't the home label. Instead, Liberator, you know, I guess a lot of the releases that we do have for Liberator music, the plan is already dictated to us. So we don't set any timelines. We don't create the plans extensively. We don't create the videos. We don't do any of that. Ivy League, we do everything from scratch. We do the videos, we create timelines, we do everything, being the home label. But Liberator music, a lot of the time, we're being told what the plan is, and then we work with that in this territory. So that's the main difference. But in saying that, it's definitely not as dry as that sounds. There's still so much room within Liberator and the international setup to be creative. You know, we go back to labels all the time with different ideas on different things. And it's just, you know, some work, some don't. So we still definitely have those opportunities, but we're not that home base for the artist, if that makes sense. Also, you know, bearing in mind, we're still, you know, Mushroom, we're still an indie, all the labels are indie labels at Mushroom, we're not a major label. So there are definitely artists overseas who sign worldwide deals with major labels, and that major label already has an office and a base here, so they would just use that. But in the case of, you know, indie labels, it's really nice. There's a really beautiful network of connections between indie labels all over the world, and some really cool relationships between indie labels that we basically tap into, create these relationships so we can tap into their expertise in their field and release music via them. So yeah, it's definitely.
I guess that kind of describes, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but the thing that Triple J on Earth released about the record labels, like the little spider web of how people are connected. Is that kind of what you mean by like the relationships and how?
I thought that was fantastic too. Anyone in the industry can't be across everything, and there's always so much to learn, but I thought I had a pretty good grasp on the labels and all the relationships here, but I saw that grid that was put up, and I learned so much from reading it. I thought, wow, there's so many more connections than what I realized. And different labels, like, oh, I didn't know they were distributed through this or that. And I think that's a great resource, Abby. I would recommend everyone looking at that for sure.
I guess like you worked with some really huge artists, like with both labels. I would love to know what your highlight has been while you've been at Mushroom, or your highlight of your career so far.
In more recent, not more recent times, but I'm just trying to riff here. I mean, the Teskey brothers working on that campaign has just been really incredible. Just obviously being, you know, massive fan of the Teskey brothers, but it's just a campaign that's so satisfying because their impact is so far reaching. It doesn't matter what music you're into or how old you are or where you've come from. Like, I feel like they've just got this universal effect that is a really beautiful thing. So definitely being at the Arias and them winning 3 Arias last year, that was a really special moment. And just the band and the managers, it's just a really, really lovely team. And I just feel really lucky to be part of that project. Also, I went with the Liberator team to New Zealand almost 2 years ago now, which feels really weird because Childish Gambino put on his Pharaohs concert. That was incredibly special. That was really, that was a real pinch me moment as well. Obviously, he's just such a superstar. So being involved in that project, even at a very minimal level, and experiencing his music come to life in that setting with the whole team was really special. There have been others. I think they've been.
That's a hefty list, I would say. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Well, you've given us some really good insight on the life of a label manager, but what are some of the things that you find challenging about your work or being within the industry?
I think I really love being part of the Australian music industry. I do think we have a long way to go in terms of just equality, learning from each other, trying to hear different voices in the industry, trying to amplify different voices in the industry. I think that's something that is slowly getting better, but I feel like there's still a way to go there. That speaking more broadly, I feel like that's a challenge. I think, you know, it's again, don't want to be too cliche. You know, there are so many different challenges along the way, but you've just got to find ways to turn it into a positive and try and learn from it, and just constantly pinch yourself. I think in COVID, everyone has had so many different challenges, and it's been really hard a very weird juxtaposition, because I feel incredibly fortunate to be working at the moment and to not be too impacted by COVID. So it's definitely, there's a lot of times that I do, if I'm feeling certain ways or feeling down, not saying that you're not allowed to feel the things, but it's important to kind of just check in with yourself and check in, all right, you're actually really privileged here, and turn this into a positive. And remember, not everyone is lucky enough to still be doing this, so don't waste it. That's a big thing for me.
In regards to like the music industry and how there's still, you know, inequality, and how there should be some voices that need to be heard, is there any advice like you would give people in that regard, like not in the sense of getting into the industry, but in regard to like the next generation coming in to the industry? How can we kind of make it a more equal environment?
I think a lot of it starts from the top, to be honest. I think and it is definitely getting better, but ensuring equal representation across festival lineups, across panels, workshops. You know, I think for this new, you know, generation of people coming into the industry, they need to see that there is a good representation, because that's who they'll learn from, right? So just giving enough voice to as many different people as possible from as many diverse backgrounds. I do think a lot of it does come from, does come from the top, I guess. And just, it does, and just trying to amplify their voices as much as possible. I also think, just in terms of general advice for people coming through at the moment, it's just not to be afraid of trying different things. And I'm a really big advocate for it, within reason, just wing it. Like, just try things and just try and wing it, and you might learn something new from it. You might make mistakes, but that's how you learn. That's a really big thing. I did a lot of winging it in my early days, and I had a mentor that was big on that phase of winging it, and probably a little bit too much, but through those experiences, that's how I learnt so much. And you've just got to be open to trying different things, and also coming back to, I guess, your question about equality. You just don't want people to feel like there are stereotypes associated with different roles in the industry. It's really important to know that it's not. Like, if you see a different role that you think, I want to go for that, but that's typically associated with a male role, I think there's a lot of education that can be done to change that mind frame as well, because it's not anyone can give it a go and get involved.
So on us, one great piece of advice, what would you say?
I think what stops a lot of people is themselves, and we stand in our own way. I still do it. I still, it's something that everyone does. I think you've just got to back yourself. Just totally back yourself. That's the biggest thing. And
I think that's really important, is to really believe in yourself. Yeah. Thank you for that. Because
of course. Yeah, of course. I think I wish I had more people telling me that, when I first started. Obviously family and friends, but when you do walk into a new environment, it's intimidating.
Back again to the whole equality thing as well. We were having such a good conversation the other day. Susie, I think you were in the conversation too, about imposter syndrome, I think it's called, where a lot of females feel like they're not capable of a role. So I guess it all kind of comes into that one kind of area of, it should just be a bit more accepting, and people should get behind each other and support each other, and just be kind of promoted to believe in yourself, because it's a big move that needs to kind of be made, I guess.
People in like senior roles as well, a lot of people suffer imposter syndrome. Sometimes it doesn't go away, it doesn't. So yeah, I think that's right. Imposter syndrome is such a big thing in the music industry, and people that you see, I've definitely had conversations with people that I see and admire at work, and I think they are just absolutely killing it and just owning it and doing this, and I admire them so much. And then, you'll have a couple of drinks with them and then it comes out that pretty much suffer from imposter syndrome, and you're like, I had no idea. Like, so it's just, yeah, it's definitely not the case for everyone, but it's definitely a big thing.
It's a really like challenging thing too, because it is very prevalent and it's not something that like you can just kind of get over, or it's like just having it's hard because you can't really just say have self-belief, because it is like a bit more of a mentality. And I guess it is a bit more of a culture behind it as well. But I guess just like squashing that culture and just like promoting everything that you just said about like believing in yourself and just really trying to build up that confidence to be like, yes, this is what I deserve to be doing, and I can do the role. That's typically a male's job. Like you can go out there and you can do it, and I guess it's more of a mentality, and it's not just something that will change overnight, but that culture, getting that and not having it anymore would be,
I know,
perfect. I think.
And Abby, having conversations just like this is a great first step in breaking down those those walls, those barriers. Like having conversations with like inspiring people like Madeleine, who's saying, even people like me, suffer from that kind of imposter syndrome and other things like that, is a really great way of having conversations that don't usually get talked about, is a really great first step, I think.
Yeah, agree.
Just on that, I did research on imposter syndrome a little bit back, mostly in that women and gender non-conforming group in music on Facebook. You'd be so surprised. I think I got hundreds of responses, but like a majority of them were from people in senior roles and CEOs and people who own businesses, and it was just really crazy to see. Lou Solomon did a really good TED talk on it if anyone's interested, but that's
definitely, it's a very interesting one. And I think, like you were saying, Jay, like I think having more conversations about it is good, because I'm not saying you feel good, but when you do hear about these people who are in these managerial positions who go through this, it does make you feel kind of good. You're like, we're in this together. Like there's no hierarchy of human, everyone does feel and experience these things too. It doesn't make you feel good that they're feeling bad, but you don't feel as alone. It's definitely a human thing.
Exactly. It makes you feel connected. It does. Like somebody else gets you.
You are amazing, and I learned so much from this.
I'm glad. I hope it's interesting enough. There's just a lot of things when I was starting out that I did not know, and I wish people told me. So I'm a big advocate for spreading the info, helping empower people as much as possible. I think what you're all doing is so good. Mango Tango is bloody awesome. Like it's such a cool idea, and I think it's just really important to check in with each other, stay connected as much as you can, because the odds of you all ending up working together in some capacity are so high, so high.